Hi everyone. So this is my presentation of Whose Records and Ethical Decision Making in Counseling. So the ethical dilemma. So we were instructed to watch a video entitled Whose Records from Pearson. In this video, the client discusses ending the relationship with the counselor. She has had enough with it. The counselor attempts to then stonewall the client's decision by bringing up other things, talking about how, tell me about how you went through so many counselors in the past. The client then becomes frustrated and demands all of her records, which we'll get to later, that the issue there. And then the counselor challenges the utility of her request, saying that they won't be that useful to her. And then the video concludes with a tense and defiant client demanding once again that she wants her records. So step one is identifying the problem. So the main problem here is the client's demand for all records. She even makes this point in there that all these little notes I see you jotting down, which are psychotherapy notes. The second problem is the process of ending the counseling relationship. It's not just as easy as saying, okay, we're done, goodbye. There is a process to end it that the counselor is ethically obligated to go through. Both problems contain legal and ethical issues, and the problem is related to honoring the client's request and what records are available. So applying the ACA standards here, the relevant ACA Code of Ethics, the first one is B.6.E, which says that a counselor must provide reasonable access to records and copies of records when requested by competent clients. This client is competent, though frustrated, and any act of stonewalling there is not acceptable. The client or the counselor needs to turn over any and all records. Next is B.6.F, which says the counselor must provide assistance and consultation in interpreting counseling records. This is pertinent because this is a time to sort of de-escalate, get rid of that frustration, and go through the process and educate the client on what records she can have access to. All of her records, but psychotherapy notes aside. And then finally is A.2.A, which says that clients have the freedom to choose whether to enter into or remain in a counseling relationship. This will be relevant down the line as well, but I put it in here because that stonewalling can sometimes be a subconscious manifestation of these client retention skills here of, let's get off the topic of you wanting to leave. Maybe I can divert you this way or another way. Step two, continued federal and state codes. So the relevant federal and state codes. The first one I chose was the HIPAA privacy rule, which is 45 CFR Part 160 and subparts A and E of Part 164. So this in part facilitates clients' access to patient records, but then also part of that is Title 45 CFR subsection 164.601 and subsection 164.508A2 of the Electronic Code of Federal Records, which makes this carve out in there of psychotherapy notes, and that this goes underneath the counselor's privilege, and that psychotherapy notes are not considered part of the mental health records, clinical or medical or billing that the client has access to. Finally, there's Iowa Code, subsection 228.2.B, which states that written permission is needed to release the client's records. Again, going back that there's a process that needs to be done in order to give the client her records, including written permission here in the state of Iowa. Then there's also Iowa Code subsection 441-9.91, paragraph F, which makes the same carve out in the HIPAA privacy rule for psychotherapy notes, that these are not considered part of the client's records that they can have access to, that these are notes that legally in the state of Iowa the client can retain those, or the counselor can retain those. Step three of the ethical decision-making model is looking at the nature and dimensions. So as far as applicable moral principles here, I chose autonomy and fidelity. Autonomy being that we need to facilitate as counselors the self-determination and independence in our clients, and then fidelity as well, with honoring our commitment to acting in a truthful, faithful, honest way and keeping our commitments. But primarily, autonomy is the main moral principle there. I have the and the reason I go with that is my citations here. So, as I mentioned earlier, about maybe some client retention skills are coming out of the counselor in the video. With Swift and Greenberg in 2012, they did a really good study that showed that about, on average, 20% of clients drop out over the specified 12-week period. And then O'Keefe 2019 really detailed sort of what you can maybe infer in this video, and that's that sometimes counselors confuse a client trying to end the relationship or counseling relationship with their client retention skills. So their client retention skills are coming out. They're not letting the client leave when this is interfering with their autonomy. As far as professional counselors that I would seek consultation from, the first is Steve Mitchell, who's a licensed mental health counselor in Iowa. He operates a private practice that's Christian-based, but then also works for an outpatient clinic doing, normal counseling work, secular counselor work, I guess one could say. He's been practicing for over 30 years. He has a wealth of knowledge, and I would go to him just to, get that extra perspective of, not just, what he would think from his education, but also coming from a biblical point of view. And then there's Elaine Hoverston, who was an LMHC and then got her PsyD. She as well has been practicing for over 30 years and is a treasure trove of knowledge, especially when it comes to ethics. As far as professional organization consultations I would make, the first one would be the Iowa Mental Health Counselors Association. Part of their membership is this access to help or access to making ethical decisions, and when you get in these dilemmas, reaching out to them. They provide free access. And then finally, the American Counseling Association I would reach out to. The step 4, potential courses of action. So the first course of action would be provide assistance and consultation in interpreting counseling records. This would be my first step in any of the actions, as you can see I have down there. This is just me, fulfilling my ethical duties as laid out by the ACA Code of Ethics. But first I would release all the records to the client except my psychotherapy notes. Grossman and Kuchar have talked about the fact that psychotherapy notes, in their study, they talked about how psychotherapy notes are intended for the counselor's eyes only, and that these are usually words, maybe a sentence or two, to help the client or help the counselor pick up where the last session left off, or note that they just want to bring up next time. Second